project. That anybody's here, but I'm gonna look at anyways if I can, but I can't figure out how to look at it. All I know to shut that off. Alright. I want to be able to see the chat, but I don't see anybody. So anyways, hey, I now have a bookshelf. Woohoo! And now, see, I have books on it. And because I've moved a lot, I had to hone shelves, so I'm going to tour through. Meh, nothing important. Oh, okay. Yeah. So first, important books, because I've had to hone this down. I have one bookshelf. One bookshelf. This is everything I own. Everything that I would ever want to pass on to another human being is pretty much going to be contained on this bookshelf pretty soon. I just have to throw on some kids' books. But I moved on fast. So, Baudrillard, Simulations from Semiotext. The Foreign Agents series. Classic. And this is another one from the same series, Nomadology, The War Machine. Classic, Deleuze and Guattari. Absolute classics. Deleuze and Guattari, totally worth getting the big tome of theirs that has, 1,000 plateaus, that has spatiality. It's got this in it. It's got a bunch of other stuff. This is a book that I keep around because it's just like one of these really well-written, there's a whole series of books that they used to do. I don't know if they still make them. They're just like, pretty dense, but lots of good adjectives. And if you want to do cut-ups, adjectives are the thing. One of my first books ever, ancient tome, Minerals of the World. It's like the Peterson Guide. Look at this. I'm totally giving myself away, whatever. Yeah, this is like my 10th birthday or something. 13th birthday. I don't live there anymore. And it's just like got the best illustrations, all the cubic systems and stuff. Like, this is a really beautiful book. It's like a Peterson Guide, but I just find that the painterly, the quality of the diagrams, just exquisite. This is just like one of those reference things that you want all the time. It's like, well, if we're talking about that, like we're talking about a product, and it's like, okay, so where would I find that in nature? What's the mineral version of that, or whatever, or vice versa? What minerals, like rutile, one of my favorite minerals because it has a really high. Look at that. There's actually people. I don't know how to see the chat though, because I'm just like clueless on all this shit. In the fridge. I think I made sure that it was. So, share? Not yet. Save highlight. I don't know. So you guys are just gonna have to put up with this. So anyways, this mineral book, totally awesome mineral book. Seriously, like, because rutile has an incredibly high dielectric constant, so it ends up being one of those things. And this is gonna take forever. Signing, which I've always wanted to do, never get around to, of course, because I'm a bad human being. So they'll do non-fiction first. Elizabeth David cookbooks. These are like, to me, these are like quintessential cookbooks. Elizabeth David. Because the recipes, these were given to me by one of my very first partners, or she turned me on to them. And it's just like the way that they're written is so just like rustic recipes. It's not, it's like an onion a handful of tomatoes, a dozen tomatoes, you know, it's like, let's not get all picky about this kind of thing, you know? That's not the way the world operates. Nobody's like, we're not measuring grams every single day when we make dinner. Morning of the Magicians. Jacques Paul and, what's his name? Oh, wait, Louis Paul and Jacques Bergier, as I ruin their names. Morning of the Magicians. They wrote a bunch of books back in the day. You know, this like sort of came out when I was a kid. So, and this is just like super dense, metaphysical, you know, trying to figure out, this is like back in the day, trying to figure out it's the Charles Fort problem. Is you look at the evidence presented to us by the universe, and if you ignore all the anomalous, it looks very nice and, you know, nice and normal, like everybody expects. But as soon as you allow that anomalous stuff, that 1%, that 1%, you know, like fraction of a percent of the anomalous in, suddenly we live in a crazy house, which is what seems to be like erupting right now. Another great book, Magic Science of the Future by Joseph Goodevudge. These are all like really great sort of like early psychotronics design. Hieronymus machine, yeah, exactly. This is a tour of various sort of like alt technologies, what you could do with brains. This is like another Juvenalia, basically just about evolution, but it's got really just beautiful descriptive passages in some of these books. I just love Dawn of Life, same thing. Oh, here it is, On the Line by Deleuze and Guattari. Again, I think this is in Thousand Plateaus. Totally worth getting. I think it's like seminal work or something. It's just like condenses a bunch of stuff. And it really says it well, and it's very simple principles, really, for the most part. You know, On the Line, No Methodology, The War Machine. It's almost like physics, seriously. Ooh. Classic. Conspiracy, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Who knows? Jesus was an alien hybrid, if he existed at all, physically. And instead of dying on the cross, somebody else died for him. They sailed him off to south of France, where he had a bunch of kids. And now those kids are sort of like, you know, tracked and super important because they were Jesus's kid. I don't believe in bloodlines. I think that the whole bloodline thing what ruined the Star Wars universe, as far as I'm concerned. Initially, it was not about that. It was about self-discipline and cultivating the Force. But then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, you inherit the Force in your blood. It's like, okay, be like that. Another great book. Sky Creatures, Living UFOs. This guy, Trevor James Constable, back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, took got film and then put a filter on it that basically filtered out all the visible spectrum. But we have almost exactly 1 octave. Our visible spectrum is almost exactly 1 octave. So if you cut out all the middle, the interference pattern between the two edges, between the UV and the infrared, can be recorded on film. And he took all these pictures and he was like, what the heck? All of a sudden it was like plasma, basically like weird plasma balls that he would get on film back in the day. The photos aren't very good for the most part, but it's a very interesting concept and we have way better tech nowadays. Dianetics, a classic. Again, I'm not a Scientologist, but there's lots of interesting tech, so to speak, They don't like it to be that, and probably, who knows, I'll get in trouble. But there's lots of really interesting ideas in Scientology writing. Where's another one that I got? This one. Fascinating books in terms of their, just like, forget it's Scientology. You know, it's like, just because there's a Catholic Church, you couldn't find anything noble in the writings of Jesus or whatever, like the New Testament. That makes no sense at all. Okay, we extract what we extract from things. So if you're good, you can find a lot in a lot of Drek. Hakim Bey, Taz, classic. Find this, read it, embrace it. Let's walk away and walk into a future. Okay. Yes, this is like classic, bunch of articles about dropout hippie culture, because, you know, that's me. Must have. Actually, there's an interesting thing. This is going to turn into a long live, but for me, long is 11 minutes. So there's a thing that I'd like to do with these. Okay, so this, not that sigil maybe. Some of the smaller, more simple ones like this. Right? And what you can do is, if you position them on an angle, you can do the cross-eyed thing that you do to get a stereoscopic image. And you cross so that, like, these two dots are sitting on top of each other. Or these two dots. Or it's sitting, or the dot is sitting in the middle. Like, you can control that once you practice just a little bit. It's like ear twitching or something. And it constructs this new sort of like three-dimensional image out of the superimposition. Or you take two of these, and if you cross your eyes so that the two circles overlap, and then you'd have these, but each of them is sort of floating on its own plane. Hey, is there somebody here? We're touring my bookshelf, because I finally have a bookshelf to tour, and I am so happy. Is the microphone working? Somebody typed. I saw what somebody typed. Yeah, so we're touring my bookshelf. Missed a bunch. We're up to the Necronomicon. These are not in order yet. And we're doing non-fiction first, and then we're going to move to fiction. Another very interesting, weird piece of periodica, the Lucier color test. It was a personality test that they developed in Europe using colors. And you would pick the colors in your order of favorite color. Basically, your favorite color at the front and your least favorite color at the back. And you just do that, and they would use it, and they developed this personality analysis structure that's quite intense. And Olivia, oh, cool. Okay, everyone say hi to Olivia and be super nice to Olivia, because Olivia is awesome. Yeah, I used to technically work for Olivia, but we're best buds. So yeah, Lucier color test. It's, if you can find one with the cards, it's actually like eerily good, eerily good, eerily good, and deep and profound. And it's different each time, because on a different day you choose different colors because you feel a different way, and it totally represents that. Like, it tells you how you are feeling in that moment. It's really quite fascinating. Let's see what else we got. Reading and writing Japanese. I did that for a while because I was really into like symbolic language systems rather than like English, which is like a sort of semi-phonetic with really terrible spelling. And I found Japanese fascinating because there's this one, especially this one symbol that stands for thread. And it's like a little spool of thread when you're, if you're doing that thing that I can't remember what it's called, spinning of yarn initially. It's like a little tiny spinning thing. And when you look at the chart of all the words that have it as an icon identified with it, it's just really great because it's like this conceptual thing. It's like, oh, it's like a person and the thread. It's like, oh, that's friendship or lovers, right? And then the thread to a house is like, oh, that's like sort of like familial affiliations and all these things. It's like so symbolic and sort of clear in terms of ideograms. It's really beautiful, and it's like, yeah, maybe a cool language because you can read it. What's this? Another crazy one from the 70s. Psycho-cybernetics and self-fulfillment. It's like early NLP sort of stuff. Yep. A couple of my nature books because I love referenced these little tiny ones. Golden field guides, golden nature guides, reptiles and amphibians, with the cool illustrations. They got great illustrations back then. Oh yeah. See? Isn't this cooler? Come on, that is so much cooler to have that in your pocket than a phone and looking at an image. Anyways, I'm no folk. American Girl's Handy Book. I haven't actually read this. I got it recently, but it looks cool. Okay, now we're veering into, that's fiction, but we're doing nonfiction today, initially. So, oh, here we go. More stuff everybody should have. Wilhelm Reich, the single greatest natural scientist of the 20th century, in my humble opinion. Selected writings, good place to start. Check out his biography. He was like an early communist. He was a psychologist studied under Freud. Became a communist because he didn't want to be only dealing with bourgeoisie, and he was sort of like, you know, got involved as a youth into the whole like open living and stuff like that stuff. Like he's pro-sexuality and that people should be having orgasms and shouldn't feel guilty about sexual stuff like that. He was a very early proponent of that as part of a healthy, what he called sex economy and part of the biological economy. So anyways, so he got drummed out of Germany for being a commie pinko, free love agent, and got driven to, I can't remember, but eventually got sent to the United States, did research in the United States. Just before he dies, he's in contact with UFOs. He starts controlling the weather, doing weather control experiments, and he develops, or seems to develop, a way of mitigating radiation poisoning and maybe even turning radioactive material radium, because he had a radium needle, and he made this radium needle not radioactive anymore, which you in theory can't do. There's no way of like radioactive decay just happens. You can excite it and make it go crazy, but there's no way of calming it down extra fast. So yeah, and then they put him in prison where he died. So I have 2 copies of selected writings. Who knows? We can have a contest. No, I don't like contests. Anyways, okay, convince me somebody why they would want a copy if they want a second copy. I have 2 copies of selected writings for some reason. Earth Magic, I don't remember. I was given. This is an interesting book. Here to Go by Brian Geisen. And it's interviews with this guy, Brian Geisen, who is an artist, very good friend of William S. Burroughs, and basically conceived of the cut-up method, only he sort of used it as art and stuff like this. It's using an artist, but I'm very much a philosopher of culture and investigating how we program ourselves using symbols and language and stuff. Bay Area Forager. I got this when I was living in the Bay. so that I could forge the Bay effectively. Great book. As you can tell, it's a little worn, but that's because I had it in my backpack every single day. Basically. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Ooh, this is. Yeah, kids not invited. This is the Salivation Army. This is a collection of sort of like occult gay porn poetry stuff that my friend made as a magazine. He's my friend now. It's funny. It's like he put this magazine about 15 years after I had really been involved in similar culture in Toronto. And then we ended up meeting up in New York via my friend Genesis Peorage. And it was like, what? You were like the next generation of kids. Cool comic book by a friend of mine. David Sachs. Child art, cool book about child art because I love children and I love art. And hey, what can I say? Neutrino Hunters belongs to a friend of mine, haven't read it yet. Some magazines called Swoon, a friend of mine put together. They're like little fashion magazines for like small artist stuff. Something is ringing. Do 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 do. Where is that other phone? Not that phone. Well, somebody will call if it's really important. Oh, here it is. No, nothing important. Okay. Where were we? Oh, cool book. Recombo DNA, The History of Devo. One of my favorite bands ever. Maybe my top 2 or 3 favorite bands ever. Just because they tried. You know, they tried. They try to do something more than just stuff. And I ended up getting to meet the author, Kevin C. Smith, while I was living in the Bay. Super sweet guy. We got to hang out a few times. Let's see. Oh my God. Okay. If anybody's still here, I'm going to show you 2 versions of this. Apocalypse Culture, edited by Adam Parfrey. Classics. Classics in alternative culture. And essays by all kinds of people just about how odd people can be in cults and how they fall apart. And there's a great essay, amazing essay, in one of the 2, because there's 2 versions. This is the original, which I got when I came out in 90 something probably. This is the original. And then updated, expanded, and revised. But this is insane. It's like a prose poem about the decay of society. And it's just like, it's so despairing, and I don't want to stick with it, but it was just like, it's so well written that you can't ignore it. These are gonna go like that. Let's see, that's fiction, that's fiction. Fiction, 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 fiction. Not quite fiction, okay. Because we're doing nonfiction. Sort of. The Invincible by Nicholas Roerich, who is a painter, like spiritualist painter, turn of the century. And he went on all these adventures through Himalayas and stuff like that. And this is sort of like just his thoughts, and it's just some beautiful reading about like sort of philosophical musings about the world and culture and life, the inexpressible. Delay. All the roles that delay plays in life. Significance, the concept, these kinds of things. It's just like a great writer, sort of visionary, Oh, here's a crazy book. This is like a cult classic book. The Ultimate Frontier by Eklil Krishna. An account of the ancient brotherhoods and their profound worldwide influence during the past 6,000 years. An original paperback from back in the day. And this guy ended up, it's a fascinating book. It's one of these books that like falls into your lap somehow. And this guy started to build like one of these intentional communities back in the 70s. I'm not sure it worked out. They often don't, people. But, oh, another great one. Future Science. Again, this is all kinds of like early research into like bioelectric fields, regeneration, psychic stuff, like scientific testing for remote viewing, all this kind of stuff. Future Science. What else we got? One of my favorite books, ever. The Job by William S. Burroughs, interviews with William S. Burroughs, again, philosophical musings. And maybe he did kill his wife in a drunken situation and stuff, and people do terrible things, but whether he meant to or not, or whether it was an accident, most people seem to think it was an accident. So they're just dumb, stupid kids. But the cut-up method is magic with a K. And these are musings and philosophizing on the power of word image association, how people get programmed, all this kind of thing. This great book. Great collection of all kinds of awesomely transgressive and breaking films from history and all the different ways that they, you know, sort of used film as a real, as a powerful medium rather than just a marketing device, you know, as a as a form of graffiti in a way. Rant by Wilhelm Reich. For all the people just, you know, sort of, just all of us tolerating bullshit. When we shouldn't, really. Let's see. Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. Again, a classic, absolute classic. It has so much in here. There's yoga. There's a bunch of things. I mean, I'm not a huge Crowleyist. I'm way too KO for any kind of system. But it's worth reading once. Oh. Sacred Intent, Conversations with Genesis Breyer-Bjorge. With my friend, well, I think they're all done with Carl. Yes, Carl Abramson, who's on my Twitter thing and stuff. Anyways, and on here someplace. They do interviews, great interviews. I miss my friend John. Always just musing. It's like Jen was like this huge hippie, really huge hippie, who just, you know, the punk thing was because being freaking pissed off, you know? Why? Why does it have to go wrong? Can't we make it right? Can't we work this out? This is, again, one of my very, very first books ever. Like personal books. Survival in the Bush by a local guy. Local stuff. Just my very first sort of like handbook, survivalist handbook. I'm always into it because I mean, it's like, yeah, I love technology, but I think it's important that we always have the confidence that when, if everything falls apart, you got a good enough handle on the wider world to go, okay, I can pull Neolithic and make it work. You know, all my ancestors did. If they did, why can't I? I'm supposed to be smarter than they are and know more stuff, right? Huh. So this, ooh. Sentix, The Touch of Emotions. Manfred Klein's very interesting work this guy did, taking very careful, he developed like a device that measured both forward, backward, like pressure up and down and sideways and forward. Well, actually, I think he ended up having all different types. But basically, you'd rest your finger in a little pocket and it would sense micro movements of your finger in response to various stimuli. And he went through a series of things where it's just like, okay, be angry for a second. Like imagine an angry situation, imagine this situation, imagine that situation, through all these emotional situations. Then he played various pieces of music, well known for like sort of pieces that everyone recognizes there's a thing, that's emotion. But also he would play through pieces of music and people's emotional responses literally mapped the forms of the melodies, like a dramatic shift, right? Where you rise up a whole octave or maybe a fifth, even, you know, rather than a truly melodic progression, which is always just the next note heading up and down the keyboard. That's sort of like a totally mellifluous melody, right? Because it's all joined together. And then a more dramatic melody jumps around more. And these kinds of things showed up both in people's fingerprints and in the form of the music itself, as if music and us is one thing. Ooh, what a weird idea. How sensible would that be? Let's see what else we got. A little kind of communism technology more, because I got a whole bunch of survivalist stuff. Because I love that. I've lived a simple life for a while, and actually I miss it. It's just not here. It's freaking cold. Edible wild plants. Ooh, Fenris wolf. If you're into more occultism-y stuff, we'll get to non-occultist stuff. But this is a great collection of sort of psychology, magic, culture, all kinds of things. Just a great series of books. Another book by Jen. His memoir, basically Jen's life. But, you know, as I said, it's interesting. I just miss my friend. I don't want to get into it. I'm going to cry. It's weepy and cry. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is interesting. Beautiful Nonsense, a book by Paul Hogan, who is my mentor. So back in the day, for a long time, from 87 till 99, I worked at this one place doing arts-based rehabilitation, arts-based healing with children at this children's hospital. And we developed this sort of approach and methodology, and maybe I'll go into it sometime and do a full work through. But anyways, this was one of the guys who started this program, and I studied underneath him. And when he left to do some work in Sri Lanka with the kids who had been displaced by the war there. I stayed here and took over as artistic director for a while. And yeah, so this is his work outside for the most part of Spiral Garden, developing it all. What led to Spiral Garden is Galen. Might possibly be someplace in here. Or maybe not. It is about Paul after all. But yeah, so they went to Sri Lanka and did work, and now he's back here. Very interesting. I hope to work with Paul again in the future. Something larger. And if you type something, I can see what you're typing, so I can't respond if anybody's still there. The Foxfire books, these are classic hippie Back to the Land series from back in the day. Classic. You know, how to build a log house, how to build a chicken coop well, all kinds of stuff like that. Just all your, oh no, did I miss something? Country Wisdom Almanac too. Yurts, totem poles. Oh, this is my survivalist section down here. Bunch of survivalist stuff. California foraging, cedar, all about cedar trees. Everything you could possibly do with a cedar tree, which is way more than you would think. Way more than anybody would think. Eat, make the wood, make fibers. Cedar is like a magic plant. I had no realizing making gourd musical instruments because I love music. See what else we got. Tom Brown's Field Guide to Wilderness Survival. This is like a new classic of wilderness survival books. The company that I worked for a while, Trackers, is largely based around this kind of work and has some affiliation. Oh, okay. Woo Physics, classic. Robert O. Becker and Gary Selden. Okay, classic on biofields, their role in regeneration, the voltages, all like experimental data setups. Great book. Love this book. Oh yeah, and there we go. My cover fell off someplace. That's not what's important. What's important is the book. Synergetics and Synergetics 2, which I don't have a copy of presently, I don't think. No. All about geodesics and learning them, and it's weird, but it's fascinating, and it's always difficult when people develop their very own language, which I try to avoid doing, actually, and figuring out how I can describe something in the words that these people expect it to be described in, because that way it sort of helps. Yeah. Now here's an interesting book by my friend Jason Louv, more sort of occult stuff and self-development. Fight the Future, Hyperworlds. Ooh, let's read the back. Hyperworlds Underworlds is a, oh man, uncompromising chronicle of the utopian dreams and apocalyptic nightmares of the 21st century. Oh, right. This is Jason talking about what's happening now 10 years ago or 15 years ago or something like that. Super early book about transsexuality, which was a big deal and sort of very political at the time, and I don't know. I just think making aesthetics political is dumb. We should never do that. Never mix aesthetics. Aesthetics is aesthetics. Just let it be. It's exactly the interruption of aesthetics and the blossoming of a person that causes all the problems. So let aesthetics reign free. This book again, yeah. A lot of really interesting stuff in here. There's like, I think there's this brief essay on this concept of sort of dividing your life into three parts and people being different types. There's like a being person, a doing person, and a having. And in our lives, we do all of these things, but some people are more about the having. And if you develop, you get too much into having things, like having too many books or being acquisitional, then that's like an imbalance. And then there's the doing people who are always doing things and have nothing, but they're so busy that they're never really being. And then there's the being people who are kind of slothful and just like being, and it's kind of fine, but they're not really doing anything and they don't really have anything. But there's things to be said for all of these, but balance. The Psychic Bible, which includes various works from, one of my poems. Like here, a piece of glass, so it makes two poems at the same time. The Psychic Bible, which is a bunch of essays and this and that, the compiled works of the Temple of Psychic Youth, of which I am a lifelong member. We came this way, right? A Handbook for Ecstatic Survival. Oh, this is a biography of a dance guy, some local dancer, David Earl. But it was designed by my friend Michael, which is why I have it mostly. I'm not one of those biography people very much. Apocalyptic Witchcraft, which is apparently another classic, though I've hardly read it, honestly, but I'm so just my own practice about everything. Peter Gray, classic though. This amazing book, one of my favorite books ever, Gone to Croatan, Origins of North American Dropout Culture, looks into like the way the slaves and just in the way the indigenous people, I mean, their whole lifestyle was sort of like semi-dropout. They were just like, whatever, like, yeah, with your technology stuff, but it's annoying too. There's ups and there's downs. So Gone to Croatan, great collection of essays. Seriously, like, I can't go on. It's a whole bunch of different pieces, so it's got so much in it. But it's just one of those incredibly rich books where it's just like every single one of these is just like an article you're so glad you read it for the most part. Same with that Apocalypse Culture book. This, my friend Jason's book, all about John Dee, who was like basically the original court magician to Elizabeth I, who had ongoing communications with his friend, with apparently demons or angels, depending on who you ask, and stuff. Yeah, this is crazy actually, especially in the context of everything we're starting to maybe finding out. Who knows what's going on. But so this is the guy that negotiated with the angels that America would be handed over to that sect of aliens that represent Yahweh, and that's why the evangelical Christians are all up in it. Or something. Fascinating book. Fascinating book. Book by this artist I know. It's just about a collection of photographs. Jonathan Hillsworth. I'm not going to walk you through a whole bunch of photographs like that. It's just also interesting. If you're into cults, if you are like, you know, like analyzing cults and the psychology around cults, very interesting book. By Timothy Wiley, who is also known, I believe, in like DMT circles and Quetzalcoatl and, you know, future self stuff. But this was like his earlier life as a youth and his cult and sort of like a deconstruction of what went wrong with it and stuff like that. The Futurist Cookbook. This was a birthday gift by somebody that I love very dearly. And it's cool because it was actually like put out back in the day, the Futurist Cookbook. There's a bunch of like insane stuff the futurists put together, this collection, and planned dinner parties. And a lot of the time it was just insane what they were proposing. It's just like, okay, so dinner will be a piece of cardboard rubbed against your elbow for 3 minutes. And while that's happening, somebody will be tickling the lobe of your left ear at the same time as there will be an improvisational sort of like smell thing going on or something. It was just like all these insane kinds of recipes. It was like completely taking apart the idea of food and experience and stuff like that. There's a couple of interesting recipes that are almost doable, like roses dipped in batter, deep fried, and then with coffee flavored whipped cream on top. It sounds pretty darn kind of yummy, maybe. Oh, and this because I'm fascinated by Katrinas, and I just always have been. Like, I don't know, it's weird, and I don't want to be, I can't talk about anything. I don't want to insult anybody ever, but it's like sort of like original superheroes. I mean, these are gods. These are embodiments of various sort of like archetypal characters or forces of nature or etc. And I just find you know, I find culture fascinating, so, and art especially and stuff. So like, because it's like, these are the characters, and this is how you can act out a whole mythology and histories and so much. And we sort of have that, we've sort of lost that because we don't have a collective sense, like a single culture that binds us anymore. We sort of use archetypes in that way. So, is that it for my non-fictions? Did we do the Necronomicon? Yeah, we did that stuff, the story. Okay. Let's call it an evening. I wish I could see this freaking chat. I can't see the chat unless somebody chats. But that is a tour of my nonfiction bookshelf. I will be doing another one of my fiction bookshelf and another one of my graphic novels, especially for let's like call me, we do a one-on-one soon, yeah? Anytime. I'm like totally not doing anything for the most part, okay? I am like totally, I am in semi-retirement right now. So feel free to bug me. What was I saying? Oh yeah, because there's The Casually Comics is a channel. It's the only channel about comics that I watch because I adore the host. And I'm going to be going over my collection, which annoyingly is like 90% Alan Moore. 90% Alan Moore. But hey, you know, quality is quality. What can I say? Okay, peace out. Love everybody. And yeah, UFOs, human trafficking. What is going on with that? Okay? Jeez. Wait, how do I have any colors? Controls. I have no controls. I have no control. I don't know what happened. No.